So the market is going back down after Monday, Bitcoin heading above 30,000 all the way up to 32,000, then doing an about face and heading back down towards 30,000. What is going on with the crypto market? Well, it's a good day because we have Paul joining us from DeFinity, who's an expert on price analysis, not just in crypto, but in stocks and everything for the past 30 years. And he joins us to take a look at what's going on in the greater picture with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, as well as regular markets. And then we're going to get into some viewer picks of some altcoins that you all wanted us to look at. Looking forward to that. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a real investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself, and I do own or plan to own most of what I talk about on this channel because I don't talk about crypto projects I don't believe in. Shout out to our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord that our Patreon members get access to. Now, make it rain on that like button, strap in for the show, and let's bring in our guest, Paul from DeFinity.
Hey, guys. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so good to have you. I love this day of the week. We appreciate you joining us and just giving your feel and sharing some of your experience in price analysis, just having us take a look at the charts.
Well, it's always fun and it's always interesting, and there's always something going on in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency markets, and obviously there's quite a lot going on elsewhere as well. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it.
What's so funny is I hear a lot of stock people and other people, they're like, oh my gosh, cryptocurrency, it's so volatile. It's funny for two reasons, because stocks lately have been as volatile as cryptocurrency and had record volatility, as well as I like the volatility because as long as you're buying low or relatively low, the volatility can bring some massive gains.
Oh, absolutely. The last thing you want, the last thing you want is a quiet market. I can tell you, you do not want it just going sideways. That is really, really boring. So yes, sometimes volatility can be quite hard to deal with, but it's much better than the market not moving at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does take some getting used to, people that come into this and they think cryptocurrency goes up only. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, yeah, it does go up over time. It's amazing. But week to week or even day to day or month to month, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Overall, I mean, Bitcoin's trajectory has been phenomenal, as well as Ethereum and many other projects that have done well. I mean, their trajectory is incredible. And we're basically in a sector of technology that is booming, and I expect to continue booming. And that's why the gains can be so incredible here, as well as the losses, because some things do go to zero, and new tech companies, businesses, ideas fail all the time.
Excuse me. Absolutely. I mean, when you're in a cutting edge space like the cryptocurrency markets, of course, you've got to accept that you're taking a greater risk. You can't get 10, 20, 50x elsewhere. It's just not possible. But it's very exciting. It's like the beginning of the NASDAQ stocks, and there was, thousands of companies out there. And then things settle down and the technology becomes more adopted. And then, there's still gains to be made even at that stage. So we're still very early. It's still a fascinating area, and I think more and more players, bigger players, are going to be coming into the market as time goes on. So the longer it lasts, the longer it will last. And as I say, it is still a very exciting market.
Yeah, it's exciting for me when I've seen the kind of gains. I've done real estate investing. A lot of my background was real estate investing, and some of it in traditional stocks. As well as I did go to business school, so I had the finance classes and learned about all the different tools and everything. But when I really started to become familiar with cryptocurrency, I was like, so it's kind of like investing in internet stocks in the internet boom. And some of those went to zero, and a lot of them created some of the biggest companies that there are today, like Amazon. And so we're I guess Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, all of these are internet type stocks that did tremendously well, right? All the FANG stocks. So some of the projects that we're looking at today, as they get wider adoption, who knows? Some of these might become some of the biggest companies in the world and
Absolutely.
some of the widest usage. So it's exciting, but we're still early. So don't expect your grandma to get it. Don't expect everyone you talk to get it like you do. If you're excited about this technology like I am, I've learned I just keep my discussions with my parents kind of limited and overly simplistic. I definitely don't try to explain everything to them because they aren't ready to get it. And then, like, when big stories happen, my dad will be like, no, I heard Bitcoin's up, or I heard Bitcoin's way, way down. It's like, yep.
Yeah, every time it goes down, people think that's the end of it. And but it's as we mentioned last week, I mean, it's crazy to think that one of the major highs was at 20,000, and when it went down from there, it went to what, 4,000. It was a massive correction, and everybody said it was over. And here we are, still again trading around 30,000, and there's some pretty big bears out there thinking we're going to go much, much lower. Now, it's possible that we could go lower, and I think there's a good chance that we will. But I think we're at the beginning of the end of this bear market, so it's getting exciting because I want to join it. And when we look at the rallies that are going on, sometimes they can look like the end of the trend, and so I'm gonna have to remain slightly cautious about jumping in too early, because I do think when this does turn, there will be so much upside. But yeah, I am looking. This is over. I mean, the market's moved down a long way already, and I think we just need one more kind of shakeout, and that would be it. But if we don't get that shakeout, all well and good. Great. If we've seen the low, that would be fantastic.
I was thinking that too, because I think the market tends to shake out a lot of the optimism. And before it then goes really bullish, it gets everyone pessimistic. And what a lot of people who weren't around, and they look back on the charts and they see when Bitcoin dropped from 20,000, it actually hit a bottom of 3,200. What they don't see is all the people that were predicting that Bitcoin would go down to 1,000 or zero, right?
Yeah.
And that everybody was so bullish or bearish at that time. They're like, oh yeah, no, 2,000 is going to be the bottom. 1,000 is going to be the bottom. And 3,200 was the bottom. So here we are bouncing around 30,000, and you hear people making predictions of it going to 20,000, which it might actually hit 20,000. But then you have people saying it's going to go to 12 and 6,000. It's like, it could. I don't see that happening, but it could. And what I like is, I explained on a video yesterday that my favorite time in the market is when things are starting to really head up, but it's still early, so everything's cheap. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, your favorite time in the market should be when everything's way up, but only if you participated during this part where it's like cheap before it heads way, way up. Because if it already heads way, way up, that is a terrible time to be getting in. That is a fantastic time to be exiting and celebrating the good things that you've done. My second favorite time in the market is when it's going down, but it's slowing and it looks like it's about to reverse, which is where I think we are. And my third favorite time is when it is going massively up. But if I haven't been involved in those other two parts, then the third part, when it's going massively, massively up, which is a great sell time, not a great buy time. That part's no fun when you don't have great positions already in place. At least for me, that's how I look at it, because I get scared when it's already up 27x and I'm like, oh no, like, oh man. Yeah. Maybe it'll go up 2 or 3x from here, but maybe it goes down 90% from here.
Yeah, I like it when we see a synchronization of the excuse me. No, it's going on my throat, seems to be going. I love it when we have a synchronization of the market where everything's based out and there are signs that things are turning in all the markets, Ethereum, Bitcoin, in the altcoins, maybe the dollar's weakening, maybe yields are starting to come off, you're seeing risk go up. When all those things happen, maybe gold's going up as well, and silver and other precious metals. So risk generally is going to go back in the market. And I think we will see that point come. It's just a question of, I don't mind leaving a little bit on the table for the start of that move, because when it all synchronizes in this phase, there's still a massive phase to be had. So, I think one other thing you mentioned, you're talking about the property market, and obviously your background is that and you understand the cycles very well. I was looking over London from Parliament Hill, which is a very big hill that you can see the whole of London from. And it struck me how many cranes there are turning at the moment. And that was always an indicator of economic activity and whether the property market was going to keep going up. And it's also an indicator of the top of the market when there's too many cranes turning, and it's a reverse indicator. But it seemed to me that there's plenty of activity going on there. There's still, even though rates have gone up a bit, I don't think that's enough to completely dampen the demand for property and for risk. So there's a lot of money still chasing investments. So they've been chased out of it by the recent volatility. But I think the long-term players are not shaken at all. I think they're looking to buy more on the dips, because with cryptocurrencies, there is a very long-term, especially with Bitcoin, is a very long-term game to play.
Yeah, and I have some people ask me, why did I get out of the real estate investing side? And I went full time in crypto like a year ago, and I had done well enough by being in crypto for 4 years that I could retire. And so I did. And people say, you're crazy. Why are you getting out of real estate when it's so hot? And it's like, my mentor said, his rule of thumb is when he'd go into a place to figure out whether it was a good time to buy there or not in that market, is he'd go and get his hair cut and he'd ask them what they knew about real estate. And if the people cutting the hair are like, oh, real estate's excellent, it just keeps going up and up and up, he knew it was a great time to sell. And if they're like, oh my gosh, it's terrible and all these foreclosures and everything, he's like, oh, okay, good time to buy. And so, like, really, everyone's so hot on real estate, and it takes a while for real estate to catch up. And we've seen the just beginnings of the turnaround on that I think you're right. Like, so interest rates have gone up and people are like, oh, buy the dip, which is happening. And, so there's still a lot of buy pressure, but the reason is the recency bias, right? When things have just been going up and up, everyone's all excited and they think it's just going to keep continuing. And if the interest rates stayed where they are now, they're not terrible. It probably would continue, maybe even for a couple more years. But I don't think real estate rates or interest rates are going to stay here. Now, maybe the U.S. Fed slows down their increases, but but I still think that they're going to raise them some. And as these interest rates for home loans go up, the affordability goes way down. So I think about, like, say, dual income family that make $300,000 a year and they're looking at homes. They're like, okay, well, based on current interest rates, you can afford $1 million home because interest rates are low. But then when the interest rates go up 2% from there, all they can afford is a $700,000 home. So what tends to happen is the $1 million home corrects to a $700,000 home over time, because it just starts eliminating potential buyers. Now, the crash that we had, what was it, 15 years ago or something, 2005, 2006, 2007, was a little bit interesting in that the U.S. Congress had made it so easy for anybody to be able to get a loan. And then they would back the person making the loan or the companies making the loans by a government guarantee type plan, that they were giving loans to anybody who could get one. So there was this massive overdevelopment that happened. And this crash doesn't have the massive overdevelopment, or this cycle doesn't, that we saw. If the audience hasn't watched the movie The Big Short, it really goes into that overdevelopment, that in Florida, there's just whole blocks that maybe 2 people live in, and the rest are bought on speculation because home prices were just going up and up and up, which is a clear sign of an over boom. So I don't see as much of that. So I don't think the bust will be as severe, and it might slowly come down, but real estate will reverse. And as they do, those people are going to be looking for where to put their money. Real estate's slow to reverse even when it does. So I think we're seeing the early signs of the slowdown finally, but that doesn't mean it won't take another 2 years for people to start feeling like it's reversing. And what impact does that have on cryptocurrency? Well, real estate long-term is a good long-term investment. It's not very liquid, but the liquidity on it sucks. But it does tend to, over time, in desirable areas, go up really well, which is why I was really interested in it as an investment, because over time you can make amazing returns over 30 or 40 years through real estate. It's incredible. Crypto, I guess, has some of the things that I liked about real estate, but without some of the drawbacks. Number one, if you're dealing with real estate as a rental, you then have to deal with some kind of property management, which either you're doing it yourself or you're managing the property managers, because property managers will never manage as well as you will yourself. So you're trying to manage them so they do a good job. With crypto, you don't have any kind of property management. The other thing I liked about real estate was you could go from a little bit of money to a lot, but it did take like 30 years. In crypto, you can go from a little money to a lot, but it does take 4 to 8 years. So I know some people have read about stories about some guy buys Dogecoin $1,000 and then he's like worth $2 million like 6 months later. That's a very cherry-picked story and a very cherry-picked time frame, because we don't know that he sold it when it was up that high. And like, so yeah, it looks like it. But generally in 4 to 8 years, people can go from low money to a lot of money if they make smart choices and they learn to override their fear of missing out, and they override their panic selling at the bottom, and they start to learn like solid investment principles. But that's what had me most excited about crypto versus real estate. And number one, real estate had been going up for so long that eventually turns around, and I knew that was going to be coming, and I found crypto and started to go feel for the market, and what somebody can do over a 4 to 8 year time frame is really remarkable. And so I went all in when I first found crypto. As far as monetarily, all my extra money that I made at my day job I was putting into crypto, and I stopped putting immediately into real estate investment myself. But yeah, in over 4 years, I was able to retire and no longer have the day job anymore, which was nice. Let's jump into some stuff. Let's take a look at, I want to get your feel on Bitcoin first, and then maybe we could take a look at equities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, if we start off with the chart of Bitcoin, so I think we showed the very long-term chart perhaps last week. I'm not sure if we did, but let's just do that really quick. And if I get rid of put it on the log, that's it. So this is a very long-term trend line that got hit, and the 61.8% retracement got hit. And this was a spike. So this is a weekly bar chart. So what we were looking at is how the market made a spike and it went sideways. And what I said for a reversal, it needs to then follow through to the upside. And the last couple of weeks, or the last week or so, it hadn't done it. But, then suddenly we get this move to the upside. So great. That looks fantastic. It looks like potentially we've seen the low, because two of the major points about creating a low are in. One is we've seen a panic and a spike, and it's gone very close or hit some really important support points. The second point is the market starts to squeeze up. Should have done this a little bit quicker, but it is starting to squeeze up. Now, what we're seeing here is the market is coming down again. And I would like to see this extend. It needs to really extend from here without any interruption to show that there's short covering and strong buying coming in. So it's okay. It's all right, but it's still not completely clear. I think we've got to be a little bit cautious. And if I may just show you the chart of Ethereum, this is showing declining highs. So you can see these highs going down and down and down. If you look at the support that it hit is a massive support level. So this area here, it's around 1720. It's been massive, absolutely massive. So each time it's hit it, there are investors going, right, that is where it stops. So it did it on the spike. It did it just again, but it's coming down again. So this pattern here is beginning to look like what we call a descending triangle. Now, descending triangle is each time the market rallies, there's somebody selling into it, and that selling pressure comes in quickly. Eventually, we'll see a break of this low, and the market will continue down. So I'm a little bit concerned because of what Ethereum looks like more than what Bitcoin looks like, but I think it will follow through to the downside. So have we seen the low? I don't think so yet, just because we aren't seeing that synchronization. But also, just one other quick point. We sometimes look at yields. So if you don't mind, I'll just quickly pop this in here. Yields were correcting, which was a good thing. And, the market was looking to put on risk, but the trend is still to the upside. And I was saying I wasn't convinced that we'd seen the top yet in yields. And I think this will drive the market to potentially one more move higher, which will suck money into the dollar, which will then, keep Bitcoin and other markets under pressure. So we'd seen the correction, and that was kind of good. And this is what I think has allowed Bitcoin and other assets to rally. We had a really good bounce in the stock market because of this. But look what's happening now. This is moving back up again. Now, this could turn into a reversal pattern. There's a possible head and shoulders there developing, but we're going to wait to see it complete before we call it. So that's what's going on in the kind of macro area. But you said you wanted to look at the stock market. Do you want me to look at anything specific?
NASDAQ, so the tech stocks, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is still a downward trend. We've had a massive rebound, a really strong rebound, a good rebound, but it's very similar to the Bitcoin chart. This isn't enough to indicate that the trend is over. It's just enough to say that there's some good buying and some bottom picking, which is understandable. Short-term players have come in to buy the market, but we need to see more evidence of a reversal. And it feels like this is going to start to peter out and come back down again. So I'm not going to be drawn into buying the NASDAQ as yet. I think we need to wait. And the fact that the yields are going up and the dollar's rallying again, or starting to move into its potential next bullish phase, is enough for me to sort of be extra cautious here. So, I this is a good move to the downside. I could understand if it was the low. It would be a very good place for it to be the low. I'd like it to be the low, but I just can't call it here yet because I need to see something more significant in terms of a reversal pattern to indicate that the low is in. So if yields keep pushing up, this could start to come back down again. I think potentially we're going to see it move to around 10,600. This is the Fibonacci retracement level, the next big one. It sort of worked around the 50%. And with Fibonacci levels, it either worked bang on or not at all. So the 38.2 was really good. It bounced cleanly from that. The 50%, it sort of went through and then rebounded again. It wasn't quite so clean. So if it does come down again, 10,600 is where I would expect to see a bounce. And to be fair, I think we should be approaching the low in terms of the market, because yields will have run its course. The dollar should have run its course as well. And I think things will start to flip the other way and risk will start to go back on. So, we could be at the low, but I don't think so yet.
Yeah, I'd agree. So, looking for probably possible more pain in the NASDAQ, but also more pain probably in Bitcoin, that we probably haven't hit the low. In ETH looks really strong that it hasn't hit its low. And so just to summarize, I guess, my thoughts on where things are at, kind of major directions before we jump into some of the specific altcoins. And these are specific altcoins that the audience has asked us to look at. So why don't we dig into some of those, starting off with, before we jump into the altcoins, let's take a look at Microstrategy's ticker. It is somewhat correlated to Bitcoin. This is Michael Saylor and his company Microstrategies, which he has been putting a lot of Bitcoin on his books, and he's been borrowing to put more Bitcoin on his books. And there was some concern or some FUD in the market recently that, oh my gosh, Microstrategies, if Bitcoin keeps dropping, is going to default because there's some leverage involved with the Bitcoin. And that's when you saw the stock price really, really drop on Microstrategy. So it was as high recently as what, 1,200?
Yeah.
And dropped at the bottom almost to 120. Oh my gosh. It went to a 134 that it wicked down to. And that was right during the FUD, I think, of the Terra Luna collapse. And oh my gosh, and Microstrategies might collapse. And if Bitcoin's price goes down too much, and it wouldn't have, because they have contingency plans for if that happens. So,
yeah. So in terms of price, we have seen a really good spike pattern. So this low is very good. Very funny, isn't it? How things repeat, and this is why I like to look at charts. So it's similar to the Bitcoin spike and how that's reversed its trend. So here is it's quite a nice little low. There's a little double bottom pattern which was triggered through 224. Now that's enough for a short-term trade, but it's not enough to turn the trend around. What we really need to see is a break at least of this line here, and this line isn't even the main downward trend line. No, it's coming in from over here. So if I draw that line in, which will be from the top here, let's just get rid of the magnet because it wants to. There we go. So see, that's the main downward trend, and it's just accelerated down. So in order for us to get bullish, it really needs to at least take this out. But short term, yeah, sure, you can, buy it on a short term bounce. But I would worry that resistance up here at 303 might cap it. And let me explain why. When you see a low, the size of the reversal pattern indicates how much of a rally or reversal you should see. Sometimes markets do hit a spike and that's it, and they turn. But very often, you'll see the market go sideways for a bit longer and consolidate. And that's usually when there's not so much focus on it. So when people stop talking about it, it starts to go up. I mean, I could mention one very interesting market that you probably haven't heard of for a long time, and that's Evergrande. And you remember what was going on with Evergrande?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, it collapsed and then it went down again. And, there was a consolidation, then it went down again. Now, no one's talking about it. And I noticed that it had potentially, unless it's gone completely, it looked like things were turning around. Now, this chart hasn't updated here, so it could be that it's just gone. But what I'm saying is that when people aren't talking about something, that's usually the best time to then look for a reversal, when there's no longer lots of discussions going on. So you would never try and pick something like this up until it's made a proper reversal. But I think it's funny that people forget about these things, and when they hit all the headlines, that's very often a bad time to be investing, because you're either panicking in or panicking out, one of the two. But when people have forgotten about it, the technicals will still tell you when the market is basing, and that's a better time to get in. So there was a little bounce there, but the chart hasn't updated, so something else may have happened. But that's what I'd be interested in looking at, something that people had been talking about and basically forgotten about for a while, so it's all gone quiet. It's a bit like what you've said before about buying when it's boring.
Yes, that is one of the signals, right? Like, it literally over the past 5 years, it's a big part of what's helped me do well, is just remembering all the good projects. And then when nobody's talking about them, diving in, trying to make sure that they're still alive and ticking and going well. And if they are, then making a purchase while nobody else is thinking about it, right? Because I know we're all tempted to buy when a project is in the hype cycle and, oh my gosh, and this is great, and it's just going to go up forever. That never happens. It doesn't just go up for forever. In fact, if everybody's talking about it, it's likely going to go through some pain. I mean, remember 3 months ago, everyone was talking about how Luna was the greatest thing on earth, and you were feeling FOMO to buy Luna, probably, if you're a normal human being. And now, it's not normal that it crashes to zero, and there's special circumstances that made it crash to zero. But if you think back to what was in the hype before, and then as it kind of fades and everyone's attention deficit disorder turns to something else, then people forget about that. And then there's a lot of times new people are selling what is now boring to buy the shiny object. And that's when I like to make my entries. When it's boring, nobody's thinking about it. I do try to double check, make sure they're alive and ticking and well, because they can go to zero, especially altcoin projects. Bitcoin's not likely to go to zero these days, but it could. Likelihood's not very high that it does go to zero, but some of these altcoin projects are a lot higher likelihood they can go to zero. So you do try to make sure that they're alive and kicking as best as you can. And then then I like to make some pickups. So great. I'm glad you shared Evergrande because, yeah, I am concerned about China's real estate market because some of the markers of what I saw in 2005, where there were whole neighborhoods that nobody was living in, China's doing that, some of that now, where they have whole neighborhoods. They have big, huge condos that almost nobody lives in. And so it's like China's crash is going to be massive with that because the same things that we saw. And there was some, the government, the US government is actually one who broke the economic incentives for 2004. Well, they broke it back in like 2000, 2001 timeframe. And you saw the rollout and it caused this massive boom that didn't crash till 2006, 2007. And I don't know enough about the CCP, but probably there's some economic incentives there that kind of broke the free market so that there was overbuilding going on because they do have these massive, massive projects that nobody is living in. In fact, like I've heard even like small little subdivisions that almost nobody lives in. That is never good.
Yeah, you definitely need people and a rising population in order for areas to succeed. And I think also, of course, there are a lot of Chinese. The population is massive, but the one child, one family policy is very difficult to get people to change. And actually, the richer people become, the less they want to have children. It seems so. It was a policy that was there for a long time and for a reason, but we're seeing that in the West where people just aren't having as many children, and you need children, you need the population to
replenishment. Yeah,
exactly the future taxpayers and new business, and nobody wants to go to an area that's a ghost town. You want people there, so that's why I always in the UK I love the fact that we have people that come from other countries. Immigration's great. It's fantastic because it revitalizes all sorts of areas. So, but people have different opinions on it.
absolutely. Yeah, we need population growth or at least sustainment, right? Let's take a look. Let's jump into some of these altcoins.
Sure.
Let's look first at Legends of Crypto game. Now, this is an interesting one. This is one of the earlier blockchain games, and they launched like early last year, like March timeframe. So they launched right in the hype cycle, and they were developing a card game that they had. Blizzard, I think, was part of behind designing the mechanics behind this, and they were going to use some of the figures and with the hope of creating cards that not only were playable that you could use, that had some crypto relevancy, but also possibly would be collectible as well, that people would want to collect them and hold them as NFTs. And so they have a token, and let's take a look at where their token's at.
Yeah. So at the moment, we are trading very near the prior support, which goes back to just about a year ago. So June, July last year, it based out, started to go up in this cycle. We came back down again. There was a sharp rally, which was great. That's really impulsive. That should have been the start of something bigger. There was good volume and everything. But that's just tailed off again. And it's managed to take the low out, the previous low. But to be fair, a lot of the sector is down anyway. So it may be that people are just taking money off the table because they're losing money elsewhere, or they're just more concerned. Sometimes it's the project. Sometimes it's just general kind of defensive investing. But at the moment, this is a little bit triangular. And normally you get that sort of pattern in the middle of a downward trend or when the market is continuing to the downside. So I'm a little concerned it hasn't hit its low yet. So I would be looking for perhaps one last move to the downside, and then it would get cheap enough for me to think it might be worth having a look at. But right here, it's definitely a wait for me. Where I would start to get excited again is if it can get over this over 3 cents. So we've got resistance here from this support. So it comes across to this line here. So literally at 0.0343. If it takes that out, it will look a bit like the Bitcoin move. So if it does that, you might get a short-term bounce, but whether it will be sustained or not would be another another manner, because we really need to get this downward trend reversed and broken. And it takes a bit more work to do that as yet. So I think we're going to have to be cautious for the short term. And, you might get a good bounce in the short term, but longer term, I think we've definitely got to wait.
I remember that period in July when everything was slow and people were saying, the crypto winter is here. And as you can see, it went all the way to close to these levels, not quite as low, but close, and then went up 10x from there. Now is retraced and is probably, I agree, it's probably going to get a little bit cheaper. I think this is right around the public sale price. And that's why it's acted as a really strong support, is because people can't sell and be at profit at this price. Though what sometimes happens is you have some of your pre-sale investors who will sell the tokens they get now. And probably if the vesting isn't finished, it's probably very close to finished. And sometimes they'll sell their tokens that they get at a loss because they already made a profit on some of their tokens from earlier. So you'll sometimes see price go below the pre-sale price. And sometimes people just sell at a loss anyway because they panic sell out. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it go down some lower. And I'm looking for more of, a solid base before I'm going to add to my position of this. I already have a bunch. And I've had a bunch since it was cheap before. So and I did take a little bit of profits when it was up, but just a little bit, because the massive pump that I'm looking for hasn't really come. What I'm looking for is a massive blow off top. I'm looking for a FOMO when you go to get your hair cut and like they're talking about how amazing crypto is. And they don't know anything about crypto, but they just bought something because their friend told them it was so hot. I'm looking for that type of time frame again. And then I'll be taking profits on a lot of these altcoins that I'm in, including this one. Let's take a look over at Bumper. Yes, this is such an interesting one. I've had them on a couple of times, and they are, if they're successful, going to revolutionize the way to hedge your downside risk. It's something that only blockchain makes possible. And so it'll be a new way of kind of taking a stop loss, or essentially a better way, more efficient way of doing a stop loss. Now, stop loss technology has been around for like 50, 60, 70 years. So if they're successful with this project, do really well. Well, they launched in like November and they had some hiccups in their launch, as well as then you have like token vesting where the tokens get vested and it comes out and you've seen this declining price spectrum. And I did pick up some more after their launch was unsuccessful. I don't remember what price. Picked up some more a couple months ago. It's time for me to revisit and watch this one closely because I do really like the team behind this. And no, I don't know if it's going to ultimately be successful, though their team is really strong in my opinion. So I like that. So I am definitely willing to buy even more of this, even though I have a bunch already. And I paid a lot more than the price it's at now for it. That's okay. I just will go in a lot heavier when I'm pretty sure or pretty happy with the price. And you see that declining curve, like it's starting to flatten out. And that's what I like to see.
Oh, yeah, you're getting good at the technicals. That's great. I was just about to say that. So, yes, we are seeing this this flattening out of the lows, which is the first sign to potentially there being a base. It still needs to do a little bit more work. There's a possible double bottom where it's hit a low, come back up, come down again, and it's going back up. It's a small pattern. So when you're reversing a big trend like this, you need to really see a little bit more. I'm intrigued by the actual technology because stop losses are something that you can place in the market, or it's just basically an order. So I'm not quite sure what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, I'll give some of the viewers who have followed the channel for a long time have seen me cover it. But what they're doing is, and they're starting with ETH, and say you can buy kind of like insurance on your ETH. Oh. And you can protect it at the 95% level or the 90% level or the 85% level. And you pay a little bit higher premium. And so what it does is, say you have say ETH is it? I'm just going to use round numbers. Say ETH hits $10,000. Say we go through another bull run, ETH hits $10,000. You're a little bit worried it's going to reverse. So you can protect it at say you go for the 85% level because the premium is going to be the cheapest for that. And you're like, I'm happy if I can end up selling this at 8,500. So I'm going to protect it at that level. Now, the problem with the stop loss is if it hits 8,500, like it sells and you're out. And sometimes you get wicked out, it hits 8,500 and then it keeps going up and bam, you're out and you're like, oh, shoot. So with this, it acts differently. What it does is when it hits that 8,500 level, it then buys up basically buys up enough USDC to protect you at that point, right? So that they can swap it out to that. But you don't necessarily have to cash in the kind of insurance that you place. In other words, you can wait around and say, and if it keeps dropping down, then you're like, okay, I want to cash it in and get my $8,500 for my ETH. But what's nice is you don't necessarily get wicked out. Say it hits 8,300 and then it bounces right back up before you wake up in the morning. It bounces up to 9,000. You still have your position in. And so now another thing that can happen is it keeps going up. You can then just relock in new points. And you can, once it goes below your number, you don't have to cash it out. But the longer it's below that number, you start paying a higher and higher premium to keep it there rather than just taking your stable coins out for it. It's Paul, you'll have to watch the interview with Jonathan and have him listen to how he explains it, because this is his field and your field. And so you know a lot more about the technical stuff than me, and he does as well. So you're getting me translating what he said. If you listen to him directly, I think you'll get it. And it's pretty interesting stuff. So really with smart contracts is what has made this possible, and to do it at a really low cost, because they've been able to model it and what kind of premiums need to be there to really drive the cost of having this type of thing down using smart contracts and other things. And some unique problems that they had to solve. But if this works, it's a really good way to explore further upside while hedging your downside risk. So say the market goes completely bullish, right? And you're like, oh, it's at $10,000. I just don't know if it's going to go any higher. And you're like, I'm going to protect it at the 95% mark. So hey, if it drops below there, you can cash in at $9,500 per ETH. And then it goes up to 18,000. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to relock in at 95% of that 18,000. And you paid a little bit of premiums, just a little bit. And then you lock it in at 18,000. So you can explore a lot further upside without necessarily getting wicked out if it wicks down. And so you can kind of observe what's happening, even if it does go against you and you want to cash in an insurance premium. You can sit there and look at it for a while, check out the chart, see what you want. Okay, you know what? I think that is the top, and I'm just going to liquidate to get my money out, and you were protected.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time for a company like that when people are obviously being taken out of the market. So perhaps this is why we're seeing it sort of flatten out and maybe go back up again, because the use case has increased with the correction. I think when the market's going up, people are less likely to want to hedge their positions because broadly, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, I'm just saying broadly speaking, when things are going up, depending on the sort of level of experience, people tend to just try and hold. But it makes sense to have a way to protect your position. So I think it's very interesting. But in terms of the actual chart itself, it has been in a downward trend. And as you say, it's flattening out. So it may be time to get in. There's a short-term rebound to be had here. I don't think it's enough at this stage for me to say it's based out enough for a full-on reversal. So, whilst I could see it going back up to, say, 6 cents or something, whether it'll go beyond that is not clear. Part of that is there's not a lot of data. And secondly, I think we need to see a bit more price action, but it's definitely interesting. So, one to watch, good one to have a look at. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and their use case isn't working yet, right? So they have this plan, but they're still in the early stages of they self-funded to get themselves to a certain point, and then they raised funds and they did a public sale, and they did a way that people could invest early and lock up some liquidity in order to get some tokens to kind of create a community. And so it's still early days that they haven't rolled out everything yet. And as they roll it out, that's usually when people are like, this is so cool. So it's not functioning and everything right. Their solution isn't where you can actually protect your ETH at the price yet. And, good time for them to be working on this and close to rolling something out, because the market's been trading sideways and down anyway. So it's putting a lot of price pressure downward on the price, which is cool. Even though I hold some, I'd like to buy more. So I don't mind it getting cheaper. So I can dollar cost average more in it cheaper. It's not like you love it to get cheaper, but I don't mind it to get cheaper if I can then get more of it really cheap, right? So sometimes the projects I love the most for the long term, I pray they go down, not up, so I can just buy more of it. And this is one that's like, I'm really happy to see it so low. Hope it goes even lower so that I can just buy it a whole lot for cheap. Cool. Paul, your camera shut off for some reason.
Yeah, I've just seen that. I've just switched to another one. So yeah, this
there we go.
The camera. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Let's take a look at Freeway token. Freeway token has held up remarkably given this downward time. Now, Freeway token is specific to a project called, let's call Freeway now. But essentially, it's you need Freeway token in order to hold or get more return on your superchargers. There's a Bitcoin supercharger and Ethereum supercharger that'll give you a rate of return on those, but you have to hold a certain percentage of your portfolio in Freeway token in order to get those higher return amounts.
Yeah, I mean, this is classic, isn't it? I mean, look how well it's been holding up given everything else. It's just going sideways in this range, and it is just, rock solid in that sense. Now, of course, at some point, it will have to break out. It will break out of this range, either bullish or bearish, because that's just how markets are. Remember, I was saying before about, how you don't want it to be boring. And in the foreign exchange markets, we sometimes have this for years in products before they then break out. And then we have these massive trends in both directions. So we've just seen this happen with the dollar. I mean, nothing was going on a few years ago. And it was very boring. And then all of a sudden, things changed, and it started to rally really aggressively, and there was massive volatility. But this is good. I mean, at the moment, given everything going down, you want something that can stay relatively stable. So I would take something that's going sideways in a bear market than something that's falling to the downside. So this is very good. It's good price action given what else is going on. Big spike to the downside towards support. I would just be holding this if it was mine, because I think it's doing very well. There's no reason to get out of it. If it breaks below this 0.0067 level, then perhaps that's taken the bottom edge of the range out, and I would be a little bit concerned. By the same token, on the upside, if it takes this area out here and this resistance line, then I think we're moving into another bullish phase, which I would say there's a greater chance of that happening because it's doing so well when the rest of the market's going down. So when things turn elsewhere, this should be leading the way up. So I'd be looking to see how relatively it's trading when the market turns. But good chart, really good chart. I know we've looked at it before, but I'm surprised at how well it's held up.
Yeah, they have held up remarkably well. So I hold a lot of this one. It's risky. The project gives you a return on like Bitcoin superchargers at really high risk or really high return, up to 20, 30, or 40% if you're interested in learning more. Check out some of my prior videos on Freeway token for what I like about them, but what the risks are as well, because there are some significant risks on anything that pays such high returns. There's always a risk. We saw that with Anchor Protocol on Luna, in that Anchor protocol started out with really high rates of return, and it was tapering down over time. But then Luna crashed, which meant your rate of return on the stablecoin and Anchor protocol went to zero. I mean, your UST, if you were able to cash out, didn't quite go to zero, but in a lot of cases, you lost up to like 50% of the value. And if you didn't end up cashing out at all, you lost 100% of the value. So it's a very different risk than what Luna was, but anything that pays a high rate of return has some risks. I have a bunch of money in it because I'm okay with those risks and the high return, but I definitely don't have all my eggs in that basket. And I'm enjoying a high rates of return, get returns daily on it. So check out that video if you have interest in looking at it, because you need to go in with eyes completely wide open with that one. See, why don't we look at HTR?
Okay, so right, HTR is right here. Let's have a look. HTR. So which one would that be? Hathor?
Yeah, Hathor network, I think is what they're.
Okay. So yeah, this one again is very much like Ethereum in its price action. You see, we've had the move down. Just checking its it's up-to-date chart. Yeah. So we've had the sharp move down, the spike, the rally, but the consolidation is very compressed, which is a bit of a concern because usually that indicates that this is a continuation pattern. So it may go for another leg lower. If it does, let's look to see where the support comes in. The next support comes in around 0.09. So I would be looking for that as a potential buy area, because if it hits it on a first hit basis, there could be some people panicking out. And when they do that, there can be opportunities. But for the moment, I'd have to wait for that drop before getting in. But we could be at the end of the overall bear market here, because broadly speaking, it's been a range. So if we go back to October 2020, which is when this started, okay, it didn't go up significantly, but it's played within this range quite nicely. So so the fact that it's coming back here may be a good time. The timing of the broader market might be the base that we're going to see there as well. So if everything bases out around the same time, the timing might be good for one last leg in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the same here. So that's why I think this is interesting to look at, basically because we've got this solid support at lower levels. But for the moment, I'd have to wait. I can't buy it technically yet, just because of the reasons I said. That's still too compressed. So that's what it's looking like for me.
Yeah, this one is another third generation blockchain. I'm not very familiar with it. For me, I like that. Let me share my screen. There we go. I see this nice rounding that's going on here. And if you look to the back, you see that nice rounding, what follows that, right? So nice rounding kind of slows down, and then it has a reversal. Even this so we're seeing that. It's good. I don't know enough about the team and the long term of this to say I'd be interested, but whoever suggests it, you're starting to see that. And it might go a little bit cheaper than here, but it's probably not too far off the bottom. And so I love this time period. This is my second favorite time period. Not my favorite. My favorite is when it's heading up and it's still in the early days. So
brilliant. Okay, so the next one I believe is it ENJ? Am I right?
Yeah.
ENJ, right. So is that ENJ coin? I've not heard of it before.
Engine Coin.
Engine Coin.
One of the first projects really dealing with NFTs and the ideas of NFTs and NFTs in gaming.
Right. Okay. I mean, look, this is interesting. Very interesting. Look at where it stopped on this pullback. It stopped right at this prior resistance, and it's amazing, really. If it wasn't for how everything else is looking, I'd be very tempted to buy this. But I'd have to say wait again, because this little consolidation here, if we just zoom into it, it's very similar to what we're seeing in Ethereum and other markets. So we need to wait until this plays out. we've seen Bitcoin, it sort of shot up and then it comes back down again.
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough for me to get excited about buying it. But what is this support and resistance level? That's enough for a short-term buy, but whether it's enough for a long-term buy is it's open to debate. Now, the overall trend here is to the upside. So even if it does manage to break a little bit lower and come into this 30 cents area down here, I think that for me, I feel more comfortable buying it there on a first hit basis, because that would look like a pattern of higher lows coming in from here, and then here. So I would wait, but I could be wrong about this, and I'll be thinking about this after the show, and I'll definitely put it on the watch list because of this support and resistance here. Yeah, but that's a great one and a really good one.
For me, this is a wait too, though. I'm really grateful for this project. Engine has made me a ton of money. I bought when it was really boring back here. Let me see if I can get the right timeline on this. Let me go like this. You can see kind of the right timeline. So back in November 2020, right, it was really boring. Nobody was talking about it. And so it was trading about 13, 14 cents. And I was like, well, nobody's talking about it right now, and I think it's got a good future. And sure enough, went from 13 cents to like, I think I started taking profits at like 10x, and then some more at like 25x or 20x. I was just like, this is awesome. Sold almost all of it. Had a little bit left, which I then sold on this pump. And now it's come back down. And this is why I like to take profits while it's doing really good, because you just never know how long that pump is going to go. And so it's come back down, not as cheap as the 13 cents mark, unfortunately, for all of us. That would be great if it did. But still at like 65 to 70 cents is good. But like what Paul was showing, it might hold up if it hits that support another time or two, but it might break below. And if it does, it'll probably lead to some really good price pickups. Let's take a look at Aioz.
Okay, so that's AIOZ, and right, so that's just against the US dollars, not the network, right?
Yeah, Aioz network. That should be it on Uniswap, but you probably can find it versus like, let's see how much history that's given us. So this did come out in like April of 2021. See if we have more history. Yeah, that doesn't have April, but it does have.
Let's try that. Okay, so that's yeah, it seems to have a day or so missing. I've got 28th of May. So for some reason there's a few days missing on this.
And it's all the way down 10 cents. And I'm looking at some of the details on it. So about 57% of their tokens are now in circulation. 579 million out of a billion total supply tokens. And its market cap is 47 million. Its fully diluted market cap is 81 million. And this is one that I own. And unfortunately, I'm in the red on this. And I'm okay. Like, I've been buying it while it was boring, knowing full well that sometimes these projects don't make it. And I hope this does, because I don't know that it has the star power of Theta, but it's along those lines. And if it does well, as money comes back into the market, it could reach in the billions of dollars of market cap. At least that was my reasoning behind buying it, in hopes that it would. And it has been trading mostly sideways. We did have a big bump up in, when was that? November, kind of the Facebook metaverse rally. It went up to about $1 and came back down. Now it's even. It's 8% of that dollar price that it was at. So yeah, I'm probably going to buy some more. I'm a little bit concerned that's not showing the last few days, because there have been a few projects that just in the past 2 weeks have closed their doors and stuff. Before I buy some more, I'm going to make sure that they're alive and well and kicking before I do that. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the basis of the, you know, from what you were saying, yeah, risk reward looks fantastic, doesn't it? If it becomes a multi-billion dollar company down at these levels, it's very cheap. Um, but on the way, I think we need to see the market basing out, and the price action here just is not in that phase as yet. It's still going lower, and this for me, this is a really important low that I'm not happy that it's low. It's gone below it. So this 15 cents, it came back a couple of times, went through. There was some buying, and now it's solidly through that. So I'm not saying it can't recover. Of course, it could if it's, obviously if it's still there. But I would need to see it trade back above 15 cents for me to then start thinking about buying it, because that's a kind of, a line in the sand for really important support. Now, the only other way that could happen is if this turns into some form of reversal pattern. So, or as you were saying before, if it starts to form a source of low or rounding bottom, something like that, where it just consolidates and then slowly starts to accelerate to the upside, that would be great. So any form of reversal pattern, I'd be really interested. But at the moment, this is still in a downward trend, and I'd have to wait, unfortunately. But sounds like a very interesting project. If you're interested in it, so am I.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what their ICO price or IDO price was 1.5 cents. So it hasn't even quite come down to their ICO price, but it's not very far away. It's about 5x from there. And so I have a bunch of this. If it breaks down, and what it might do is it might go all the way down that price. If it does, and they're still ticking, I'm going to load up a lot. I won't just double or triple my position. I'll probably go 5 or 6x more on my position. And then just hope, right? Like when I do this, though, I'm putting like 1% or 2% of my portfolio into something. And when you're new at this, like, yeah, you can't throw all your eggs in a risky basket like this, or you can, but the chances, if it goes against you, and sometimes it does, then it hurts real bad. After you've been around for a while and you've had some things go really, really well for you, it allows you to diversify. And so when this happens, you can like 5x your amount on it and still be within a risk tolerance threshold that is fine. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'd like to see it. I before, when I was looking at it, I was still buying it, even though it was still so high from its ICO price. I think my latest buy was like 8x from its ICO price. So that would have been about 13 cents. And so I'm happy to see it getting closer to its ICO price. If I can pick up some and they're still alive and healthy, that's just kind of the opportunity that I would love to buy a bunch more. So great suggestion from one of our viewers. Let's take a look at, do we have any more? That was our last one that I wanted to look at. Thank you, everyone who made your suggestions. And if you have some suggestions for next week, put them in the comments below, just up to 2, no more than 2 suggestions per person, or we'll only look at 2 of them if you do put more. Appreciate everyone joining us. Paul, thank you for joining us as well. I love these. And I know a lot of our audience absolutely loves Thursdays because we have you and just get to benefit from your knowledge and experience. So thank you.
My pleasure. I always enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for your suggestions, and look forward to next week, and look forward to everything being a buy one day, which I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. I can't wait for when we go from my second favorite time to my first favorite time, and then to my third favorite time, because that part's really, really fun when you've already made great purchases and you're able to sell. And that's when all your friends finally see you as a hero for investing in crypto and trying to tell them about it. And that's when, unfortunately for them, they start buying, which is, it's a good point that I start selling. And I'm looking forward to that time frame with all of you. If you're not already a Rainmaker, by joining the Rainmaker family, join us. All you have to do is subscribe and like the videos and show some support. We appreciate that. Thank you so much for being part of the family. All of you, you know who you are. And we'll see you all next time. Remember, no rain, no gain.
to the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you could. Was taught to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I'll always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Make the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. The next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Make the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.